Hey everyone, Armor Gaming here, time for another monster analysis, and today I'm going to be analyzing Atlas. After trying to break the harmony between the sky and the earth, Atlas was condemned to carrying a sphere representing the world. If he ever tries to let go of the sphere, the earth will open and devour him. Atlas is one of the newer monsters from the progressive island, and he's one of the better looking monsters in my opinion. Here we have him as a child, as a teen, and as an adult. I really like the child form. He looks really cool carrying that big old earth on his back. And there we go, as an adult he's carrying it on his shoulder. Really cool monster. Going straight into stats, we have a power of 3,509. That's a pretty high power actually. In terms of earth monsters, that's the 4th highest power. It falls behind Killer Raptor, Deadwolf, and Osteoclast. But again, 3,509, that's a pretty high power. His life on the other hand, 33,779. That is the highest power for an earth monster other than Oros. So just taking a look at this monster's life, we can tell he's going to be incredibly tanky, potentially pretty difficult to beat, and you're going to see that's actually going to be the case. The bad thing about this monster, and it happens a lot when monsters are really tanky and powerful, they have a really low speed, 3,014. That is super low. However, it's not as slow as Oros, who has 2,700, so he's not the slowest monster for Earth, but he's also pretty darn slow. Like I mentioned, he is Earth, therefore his weakness is Dark, and his trait, unfortunately his trait is Attuned, regains 15 energy points when affected by weak types. Now, what sucks about this trait is that if you look at other attackers, Killer Raptor, trait Hardened, Deadwolf, immune to stun, Osteoclast, immune to stun. If we look at Oros, he has Mountain, immune to freeze and stun. So many monsters in the earth category are immune to stun, so many have tough, hardened, This monster has Attuned, not a good trait, and that honestly really sucks. Traits have such an important factor in this game. And again, keep it in mind, Oros, even though he has a low speed, it's okay because he's immune to stun and freeze, so stopping him from attacking is pretty hard to do. But Atlas, on the other hand, he has a low speed. The chances of your opponents going before him and stunning him are pretty darn high. Again, we're dealing with earth monsters who, in Team Wars, they do have stun skills, so that's a really bad part on Atlas's trait. But heading over to his default and special skills, we have Heavy Punch, Weight Throw. Nothing too special about these two skills. But moving over to his special skill, the Weight of the World. Now that just sounds really menacing. Deals heavy earth damage to all enemies. Heavy here meaning 50 damage, not the highest, but check this out. All targets can't attack for the next 2 turns. Mega Stun, that's right, we have an AoE Mega Stun. That is phenomenal. That is super good. We have Reptile, whose ultimate attack is a Mega Stun. We have Brontis, whose regular attack can Mega Stun. But now we have Atlas, whose special attack is an AoE Mega Stun. And currently in the game, no one is immune to Mega Stun, so this is a really good ultimate attack. In my opinion, AoE Mega Stun definitely fits an attack called the Weight of the World. Moving on to skills group 1, I'm gonna briefly go over these. Blunt Force, 35 damage, 26 stamina, 50% chance to stun. It's an okay move, I guess. Planetary Disintegration, 25 damage, AoE, 31 stamina, 1 turn cooldown. Not going to be using this skill. And Crushing Force, 40 damage, 0 cooldown, 28 stamina. Also won't be using this skill. However, I do think it's interesting how attackers will normally have like a 40 damage, 28 stamina skill that has no cooldown, and we'll have other monsters that have like a 45 damage, 2 turn cooldown. It never makes any sense to me, but whatever. Let's move on. Skills group 2. Now, Atlas, like many other monsters, monsters who are really tanky, they tend to, you can run a various amount of movesets, a various amount of runes. You can make them attackers, defenders, tanks. There's so many different possibilities for these monsters. So I'm gonna try my best to go over as many as I can. And honestly, you can probably choose any combination of the following 6 skills and you're going to have a pretty decent monster. So starting off with Otherworldly Resistance, deals heavy special damage, gains a 30% shield, 50 damage, 27 stamina, 2 turn cooldown. Now normally I'm really against 30% shields, however, I really like shields. I really like small shields, medium shields, whatever, when you get to attack the enemy and just gain that shield as a bonus. I really like that. I especially like it if you're running a life rune, because 30% at Atlas's current life is like a 10,000 life shield. Imagine adding a life rune that gives him even more of a base life, which means it increases that small shield. It can go from like 10,000 to maybe 15,000 or even 20,000 if you give him a like level 8 or 9 rune, I believe. So I really like shields when you at least get to dish out an attack. I don't like shields when it's just a shield without doing anything, which actually moves us over to team effort. Gives a 40% shield to all targets. So it's an ally 40% shield. Again, I'm really not a fan of this. I I just don't see the use of shields. I don't see the use of small shields, medium shields, even a 50% shield. I don't really see the use of it. And the reason for that is most of us do not run life runes on our monsters, which means most of our monsters have base life. So if we have an attacker on our team and they have 22k life, a monster with 22k life who gets a medium shield, that is only going to give them like an 8,000, maybe 9,000 life shield. There are monsters on the enemy team with strength runes that can probably still defeat our monsters in one hit, even with the medium shield. So for that reason, I'm not a fan of shields. However, keep in mind there are multiple builds for Atlas. One of them is a defensive tanker, so this is actually not a bad skill, and I'll get into that specifically when I talk about different skill sets. We also have Concussion Tackle, 50 damage, 28 stamina, no cooldown. And the cool thing about this skill is that it dazes, and of course it has no cooldown. So if you choose this skill, you'll always have a skill to use. On skills group 3, we have Impact Crater, 55 damage, 31 stamina, 1 turn cooldown. And the cool thing about this skill is that it stuns. Now, in the context of earth monsters, it's not that great of a skill. Again, because lots of earth monsters are immune to stun or have some type of tough or hardened. So that's why it's not so good. But then again, in Team Wars, you also always face, besides facing an earth, you also face another element and maybe another rarity. So if it's legendary, chances are a stun will come in handy. So I always do like stun skills. I always like any skill that immobilizes the enemy, especially on an attacker. It's always nice to have. We have Gravitational Pull. Gains double life. Atlas will receive all single target attacks. 4 turn cooldown, but for the next 2 turns, not only does his life double, he also gets protection, so all incoming attacks go to him. Again, it's important to keep in mind it's only single attacks, not AoEs. So this guy's like kind of a mini Oros. Unfortunately, he can't reflect 100% damage, but he does draw all attacks to him. Really, really useful in war, especially if trying to keep your common alive, your uncommon, your rare, even your epic. But again, keep in mind, this only applies to single attacks. I do like the skill. I think this is definitely a skill worth running. It's definitely one of this monster's highlights. And an attacker wouldn't be complete without a super strong AoE, so that moves us over to Meteor Shower. 50 damage and 36 stamina, only a 3 turn cooldown. That's really, really high damage. 50 damage is super high. We've been seeing a lot of monsters with 50 damage lately, but I believe Atlas might be the first earth monster with a 50 damage AoE. So now that I've talked about the skills, that only leaves what skill sets and what runes should you be running on this monster. And there's quite a few, and there's like 2 main that come to mind. The first one is you would want to run 1 speed rune, and to be completely honest, it's a little tricky. And the reason it's tricky is because of this monster's speed stat. Because it is significantly low, you really can't get away without running a speed rune. If you don't have a speed rune, the enemy can potentially go 2 turns before you can go 1 turn, specifically with the main deny monster. But then again, if you have your own deny monster to deny the enemy, then you should be okay. But again, it's really, really complicated without knowing the specifics of the enemy. But just know that if a monster has double your speed, they're gonna get 2 turns in before you get 1 turn in. Your base speed is 3014 to be exact, but 3000. So all a monster needs is 6028 speed or higher, and they're going to attack twice before you get to attack once. So that's the dangerous part about not running a speed rune. So I feel at the very, very minimum, you need at least 1 speed rune. So with that out of the way, there's 2 potential builds I see. And one is 1 speed rune, 2 strength runes. And this is going to be a more offensive Atlas build. And the more offensive Atlas build, you would run Meteor Shower, you would run Impact Crater, Otherworldly Resistance, and Gravitational Pull. Now clearly I don't really need to explain Meteor Shower because that's his main damage skill, or Impact Crater. It's 55 damage and it stuns. Otherworldly Resistance you want because not only does it deal out 50 damage, you also get a shield. And again, you're a really slow monster even with a speed rune, so you need that shield to protect yourself, but you also have 2 strength runes, so you want to deal as much damage. And the reason I chose Gravitational Pull and not Concussion Tackle, now keep in mind this is a strength build. You could potentially run Concussion Tackle if you wanted to. However, the reason I prefer Gravitational Pull is because of that double life. Like, never mind protection, who cares if the attacks come at me? I'm giving myself double life. That's making my life go from 33,000 to 66,000. That's huge. That's tough to kill even if all the attacks are directed at me. And if even the attacks are directed at me, that just gives my allies a greater chance to defeat the enemy. So even though it's a strength build, there's nothing wrong with having a defensive skill in your skill set. And the next skill set you can run, it's more defensive, it's more of a tank. It's Gravitational Pull, Impact Crater, Team Effort, Otherworldly Resistance. You're probably thinking armor, all you did was change Meteor Shower for Impact Crater, and that's true, but you're also changing the runes. Now you would run 1 speed, 1 strength, and 1 life. And now you're probably thinking armor, all you did was take out 1 strength rune and add 1 life rune, and that's true, that's all you have to do. Builds are actually really, really similar, and the reason you want a life rune instead of a strength rune is because you added team effort. And really think about that. I told you gravitational pull gives you double life, right? If you have a life rune on top of your base stat of 33,000 life, let's say you added, I don't know, let's actually use some real numbers. Let's say you had a level 5 rune. That increases your life by 54%. To make math simpler, I'm just going to say a 50% life increase. Your 33,000 life would increase to 50,000, okay? 50,000 would be your new life. That's really, really good. And then if you use gravitational pull, your life is going to turn into 100k. And then if at any point after that you do team effort and give yourself 40% shield, that's a 40k shield. Or if you decide to do otherworldly resistance, that's a 30k shield. So that's super good. Like, that's why you need that life rune. So now you're probably wondering, well, why not just do 2 life runes instead of a life and a strength? And in my opinion, you need a strength rune because if it ever comes down to the case where Atlas is by himself, you are not going to have an easy time without a strength rune. Winning without a strength rune will be incredibly difficult. Like I said, you really only need 1 life rune. You saw that a level 5 life rune takes you all the way to 100k using gravitational pull. And then you just rely on otherworldly resistance and impact creator to win the battle. They're both special, so they have no weakness. And that's really all it is to it. So to repeat real quickly, 2 possible builds. These aren't all the possible builds, obviously. These are 2 possible builds. A strength build for Atlas is Meteor Shower, Gravitational Pull, Impact Crater, Otherworldly Resistance, and again that's 2 strength runes, 1 speed rune. A more defensive hybrid build, more of a tank build, would be Gravitational Pull, Impact Crater, Team Effort, Otherworldly Resistance, and you run 1 speed, 1 life, 1 strength rune, and you're good to go. Concussion Tackle you can really add at your discretion. And that concludes my monster analysis on Atlas. I hope you guys enjoyed. Write down in the comments below who you want to see next week. Don't forget to drop a like, and I'll see you guys next time.